You're in the 06010. Focus. Fantasy Focus.
Welcome into the Fantasy Focus Football Podcast. It is Tuesday, December 10th, and we are on to the next round of the playoffs or the second week of the semifinals in your playoffs. If you play on default settings on ESPN.com, Field and TMR hanging out with you to get you ready for the week ahead and also recap last night's fun Monday Night Football. But before we get to that, a couple of pieces of housekeeping.
There's also a third option, too, by the way.
What's the third option?
You're crying in your beer from losing a horrible beat on that last second Zach Ertz touchdown. The second one, I can't tell you how many tweets I got from people that said, like, oh, that just killed me. I was up 5, and then that last second. So we'll get into all of that as well.
But we have some housekeeping, Matthew.
Yes,
Let's start with Wednesday night, because those who may have missed yesterday's show, we announced there will be a special show. You, Starfania, and Daniel.
That is correct.
Heading down to New York.
Cannot wait. Very excited about this in partnership with Dolby Soho. Dolby Soho has this facility in New York City that is basically decked out in all Star Wars. Like it's become this Star Wars. I don't even know how to describe it, but it is all things Star Wars. Of course, Dolby is the one that has done all the sound effects for all the great Star Wars movies and everything like that. And so anyway, at that space, we are Secret Squirrel, myself, and of course, can't do Star Wars without Starfania.
Correct,
so we are doing that to help promote Star Wars: The Return of Skywalker, which opens December 20th. So we're doing this event in New York City tomorrow, 6 to 8 p.m. I think doors open at 5. Secret Squirrel, is that
capacity.
right?
That was the important part here.
Yes,
that we are at capacity. So for those that were able to sign up before we reach capacity, looking forward to seeing them tomorrow night. I'm sure you guys will have a very fun time there down in Soho. Can't wait to hear about how that goes.
Yep.
Second piece.
It'll be a lot of fun. There was something else. Daniel's on the phone. All right, we'll ask him.
Well, the other piece of housekeeping was that each year, the FSGA.
Yes, the Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association.
Right. Votes on a variety of awards. Or really, I should say they announce a variety of nominees for awards, things that span from host and analyst of the year to things like best social media of the year, best television show, things of that nature.
Host of the year, small business of the year. It's a lot of awards, and most of them are voted on by a judging panel of fantasy industry analysts and executives and personnel. But a couple of them they open up to the public,
right?
A People's Choice Award, if you will.
Sure.
I honestly think it's a little bit of a ploy by the FSGA to try to raise their profile and get everyone to start tweeting and talking about them and tweeting their handle.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Well, here's what we're gonna have to do. Is announce some news that our friend Matthew Berry, Mr. Talented Roto, I just butchered that one, Talented Mr. Roto, has been nominated for the Fantasy Analyst of the Year. Daniel, where are the slow claps in the background right now? Woohoo! Yay! No, obviously Matthew works incredibly hard and tirelessly across a variety of platforms. Obviously the podcast he writes. He has a show on ESPN Plus, Fantasy Football Now, you name it. Matthew is doing his best to inform the masses. And so they have an opportunity to support your cause, Matthew, and get you a win, a much-deserved win. And here's the best way to do it.
Yep.
There is a lengthy URL that we could direct you to. But rather than me actually just spelling that out, because it's got forward and backward slashes and dashes and weird
it's a brutally long URL.
Here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
You can either go to @FSGA on Twitter.
It's @FSGA Tweets.
Okay.
Actually.
@FSGA Tweets and find a link to vote on said award. And you better vote for Matthew or else I'm never talking to you again. Or I believe you are going to post a link on your Twitter.
I'll do that. Honestly, I'm looking at the FSGA Tweets Twitter, and I don't think they even have links.
Well,
I'm not sure what's going on with
go to their
this.
website from there to find out your way to vote. Either way.
Anyway, so I tweeted out a link. So if you want to go look at my Twitter feed, I just tweeted out a link right now, and so you'll see it and you'll see the link. Huh?
Pin it to your profile for those that are not currently watching. I like nothing more in life than having fun at Matthew's expense. He gives me plenty of material. It is truly one of the most appreciated parts of my life. But I also say this, Matthew works tirelessly, as I mentioned earlier. He stands out in a world of fantasy football that is very difficult to do so because there are not 1, not 2, not 10, not 20, not 50, not even hundreds, but thousands of people that are now covering fantasy football. And that's good for the business. But nobody does it like Matthew Berry. Go cast your vote to show that same support for TMR.
I appreciate that, Field. Thank you very much. It's very gracious of you. I've had a magical career. I won this award in 2017. So yes, always would be. It's always nice to win. It's always nice to be recognized and honored. There's a lot of great people. So if you'll see, like if you go to that link, certainly would love the vote, but also there's lots of other people that are also deserving as well.
Yeah, they're deserving. Not as much deserving as you are, but yeah, sure, they're deserving. So my advice here, this is my opportunity on your behalf to gloat and say, go vote for Matthew Berry, TMR.
Rewind. Fantasy news
From the National Football League.
This is the instant replay.
Let's recap last night, a game that actually was quite fun. It was ugly for the first, 15 to 17 minutes of the game, but Eli Manning returned. The Giants lose in overtime 23-17. The Eagles continued to breathe life into their playoff hopes, just a little bit of life, but they do have some life. Let's just get through it and start on the Giants side, Matthew. Eli Manning, just going to point this out just in terms of how he played. 15 for 30, 203 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. If it was just the first half that counted, Eli was great. At one point, at the end of the first half, Eli had more fantasy points for the week already than the likes of Patrick Mahomes and Kyler Murray and Tom Brady and Josh Allen and other players that you routinely count on.
I saw your tweet. It was
amazing.
It's unbelievable. Look, we thought Eli might have a good game here, given how bad.
Not that good of a game.
But given how bad the Eagles are in defending perimeter wide receivers, and we talked about this, and you saw it, right? Some blown coverages, and Darius Slayton has a huge first half.
Yeah,
huge game, but we'll talk about Slayton in a second. But I think it's worth bringing up Eli, and it's for this reason. You might be looking for a streamer next week.
Maybe. Yeah.
You might be. We'll talk about Jameis Winston here in a second, but if your quarterback you don't love, if you need you don't love the matchup, whatever, you're in a deeper league, Eli Manning played well, had a good fantasy day, 16 fantasy points, and is home to Miami next week.
Yeah.
I don't know if I haven't done my rankings just yet for the week, but I bet you Eli Manning makes my top 20.
He'll make my top 20, yes, but there are other quarterback streaming options that are still available in a ton of leagues that we'll cover later. But let's just get to the stuff that I think is more pertinent.
Just to be clear, this is more for 2 quarterback leagues. This is for deeper leagues. This is if you're slightly desperate. But I'm just saying, I think he's going to be a top 20 quarterback for me this week. I think he's a viable 2 QB or super deep league streamer at home against Miami.
So Saquon Barkley had it wasn't even okay. Saquon Barkley has had another disappointing night. Yeah. 9.7 fantasy points for Saquon Barkley. 17 carries for 66 yards, 3 catches for a single yard for Saquon. It's his 4th straight game finishing outside the top 20 running backs. We had this conversation. We kind of cleansed our palate maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago on Saquon. And the reality is he's been a disappointment. I think bust is too strong of a word, but Saquon's been one of the most disappointing players for fantasy this season. And that's not a Saquon indictment. I'm not saying he has been as bad as other players have been. But when you draft someone as the first overall player in fantasy football, the expectation is that guy carries you to the playoffs. No. That has not been the case with Saquon Barkley at all this season.
You wonder how much of the injury has sort of played into this. So he gets banged up. He misses a couple of games. And credit to Saquon for coming back sooner than you thought he did. And he actually had 2 pretty good games when he returned.
Yep.
But if you go back to that moment, so he returns in week 7.
Right.
And since week 7, on a points per game basis, he's running back 13. He's averaging 14.4 fantasy points per game. Give you some comparison. That's basically James White and Kareem Hunt.
Right. Yeah.
Nice players that have had a nice little stretch here, but
Right,
not
guys who
what
weren't
you
even
drafted,
right?
number
Or
one overall.
White was, but not Hunt was barely drafted.
Hunt was barely drafted. White was drafted, somewhere in the 6th to 8th round. And by the way, you take out those 2 games. Again, we're cherry picking a little bit here, but to your point, when you pick a guy number 1 overall or even in the top 4 picks, you expect week in, week out production.
Right. You pick, you take away Christian McCaffrey's 2 best games this season, and he's probably still like a top 2 running back on points per game basis. That's the problem. Therein lies the rub for Saquon Barkley.
100% since week 9.
Yeah.
So he had those first 2 games back and he was good, but since week 9, and we're now finishing week 14, since week 9, on a points per game basis, he is running back 30.
Unbelievable.
Like, he's not even a flex play. He's averaging 11.2 fantasy points per game, and I don't think it's all on Saquon. We know he's a talented player. The offensive line has had issues. The entire offense has had issues as Evan Ingram's been in and out of the lineup, Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard. I mean, they haven't been able to roll out the offense they want in any one game. Like, I don't think there's been
0 snaps with Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate, and Evan Ingram on the field at the same time.
Exactly.
And I think actually the interesting part is that the guy that you should be adding to that mix as talking about him as a legit part of this offense is Darius Slayton,
100%.
who last night was awesome in the first half. 5 catches, 154 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Slayton, who now has 4 touchdowns over his past 4 games. Now, it was 2 touchdowns 3 games ago, 0-0, and then 2 touchdowns again last night, but it underscores this guy is a big play waiting to happen.
He's just from the eye test. Kid's talented.
Sure, yeah.
Really, kid is talented. It's so interesting. I was having a conversation with our colleague Anita Marks yesterday. And we were talking about sort of like offensive rookie of the year. If Josh Jacobs gets shut down, who potentially could be offensive rookie of the year, right?
You're not going here, are you?
Darius Slayton is in the conversation.
Really?
I'm not saying he wins it. There are other guys, right? There, A.J. Brown has been great, by the way, if the Titans roll into the playoffs here.
Kyler Murray?
Kyler Murray, absolutely.
It's a runaway.
Right.
Come on. It's a runaway.
I'm just saying, I bet you, because they always do this.
Okay, they might have to squeeze 5 names on the ballot.
I'm just saying others receiving votes. Darius Slayton's going to be in others receiving votes.
Okay, listen, I'm happy for the Giants that he has been a solid player for them as a 5th-round pick. He is nowhere near the offensive rookie of the year this year.
I'm not saying that he is. But
Okay.
I'm saying he's in the conversation. That's merely my conversation. I'm saying that I think they have found something with Darius Slayton. I think they have found something with. I agree with you. I agree. I'm just saying that I think he will get votes. Is that fair? That's what I'm saying. I think he will get votes.
No, I do not think he will get votes.
You don't think he'll get 1 vote?
No.
Wow.
For the offensive rookie of the year?
Potentially.
Wow. That's some big blue view glasses you've got wearing on this morning.
Anyway, I think he's a really
yeesh.
talented, regardless of whether that happens or not. For the purposes of fantasy, Darius Slayton's been nothing short of terrific. I think from the eye test, the kid is terrific. I think he's a very talented player with a very bright future in this league. And he now has 4 straight double-digit games of fantasy points. He's now scored at least 10 fantasy points in 4 straight games. You heard me mention Miami. You heard me mention the week after that they play at Washington. And then week 17, if your league goes to week 17, they're home to Philly again.
Yeah.
So it is a great stretch down the stretch here for Darius Slayton. Here's a question for you, Field Yates. Rest of the season, who would you rather have, Darius Slayton or Sterling Shepard?
I don't think it's even a question right now. It's Darius Slayton because, again, what are you looking for?
Your
in
offensive
your
rookie of the year.
Right. So, listen, if he has 3 monster games, he'll work his way into the conversation. But as of this morning, no. Darius Slayton would be the one that you'd have to pick, right? Because one has the chance. So here's the bottom line. And I'm sure there's numbers to suggest that Sterling Shepard has had big games so far this year. I know he had 7 for 100 and a touchdown in a game earlier on this year. But if you are trying to play a Giants wide receiver now going forward, what you are chasing is the upside. But if you look over the past 4 games in which Darius Slayton has, as you mentioned, double-digit fantasy points, he leads the Giants in catches and receiving yards and, of course, receiving touchdowns. The guy has been the best wide receiver on their offense for the past 4 weeks, which would mean the obvious reason why I'm picking him going forward, especially you can't play Golden Tate.
No.
He has 7 catches on 17 targets in 3 games when Sterling Shepard is also on the field.
7 catches. And by the way, it doesn't seem like he's really on the same page. Look, the Philadelphia Eagles are good against the slot, but still. It's, again, as we've sort of talked about, we talked about this yesterday as well, Field, in terms of teams where you start narrowing down, who can you start from this team? If Evan Ingram comes back, then you start Evan Ingram.
It's Ingram and Saquon this week against Miami.
You got to start
Obviously,
Saquon.
Again, we're not saying you're benching Saquon. It's just that, like,
He's been a disappointment.
There are leagues where you look at your lineup in the playoffs and say, I have the decided advantage at running back. And I know, for example, like I've got Saquon in a league that, like, we're sitting there and we're like, I don't know, is he like the 6th best running back? Because a lot of teams that we're playing against right now are rostering Dalvin Cook or Christian McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara or Zeke Elliott, Leonard Fournette. Like, I'm not sure he's any advantage over those players. He certainly isn't over McCaffrey. Josh Jacobs, he's like Josh Jacobs-esque right now.
Right. I was going to say, like, if you had a decision, and you probably don't, but, like, if coming into this week, you're like, I have one roster spot. Like, you have Dalvin Cook. Okay, Dalvin Cook's in. And it's a league that doesn't have a flex or something like that. And so now I have to decide between Saquon Barkley or Aaron Jones.
Yeah.
Like, that's a decision.
How about Saquon Barkley or Austin Eckler? That's like a legit
That's a
thing that could
decision.
happen.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially.
Crazy. Now, they're playing Miami, who has been incredibly generous to running backs. So that's the answer you're going to end up landing on with Saquon Barkley. And most people aren't choosing between Saquon Barkley and somebody else, but still, again, just to say it again, it has not been the best year from Saquon Barkley by any stretch. You know that fantasy football feeling when the excitement for a new week builds, as in like week 15, you flex your analytical skills by poring over stats, studying charts, and trying to spot trends. What if I told you that you could use those skills to invest and feel that same sense of anticipation every day? TD Ameritrade thinks that you can. That's because a lot of those same analytical skills you use to set your lineup can help you build a portfolio. Not to mention, TD Ameritrade has all the education and investing tools you need to feel confident when you take the trading floor. There's paper money so you can practice trading risk-free, plus charting to help you spot trends in the market, and they'll even create an investing training plan that's unique to you and your needs, complete with exclusive videos, webcasts, and courses. Just visit tdameritrade.com/fantasy to learn more. That's tdameritrade.com/fantasy to get started. Member SIPC. So for the Eagles, if this was a game that you watched the first 3 quarters, you're probably like, whoa. But Carson Wentz put together a very productive fourth quarter and overtime, finishing with 325 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, 19.9 fantasy points. He's now got 40-plus fantasy passing attempts in 4 straight games, and the schedule's just right, Matthew. You probably had to sort of, start Carson Wentz reluctantly for a good chunk of the midseason. But if you have been riding with him, he actually has things opened up in front of him for a good opportunity to be solid for the rest of the season. He's got 3 straight divisional games, including a rematch with the team we saw him play last night and do well against in the Giants.
What a fascinating game, right? Because fantasy-wise, he was great, right? 19.9 fantasy points, throws for 325, 2 touchdowns, had the fumble. But, like, from the eye test, did not look good for long stretches. Having said that,
it looked just terrible.
Right. Having said that, no Nelson Aguilar, right? Alshon Jeffrey. No, but Alshon Jeffrey.
It's amazing that we're like at the point where it's like no Nelson Aguilar is a good thing for the Eagles.
Well,
it's a bad thing for the Eagles.
It's a bad thing for the Eagles. I'm just saying, like, and then Alshon Jeffrey leaves the game early, and they were talking in the broadcast how they had 2 eligible receivers, which is
literally 2.
Yeah.
J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Greg Ward.
Right.
One who was a college quarterback.
Right.
Greg Ward.
Yeah, of course. And Arcega-Whiteside was like a 4th or 5th round pick, like a talented young rookie, but like not somebody that like a guy that you wanted like 4th or 5th coming into the season.
Yep.
Not your best guy.
Right.
And so obviously they've got the tight ends, thank goodness, but the fact they were able to move the ball at all is sort of shocking as well. It did not look good. I talked yesterday about how I had in a number of leagues, I had benched Jameis Winston for Carson Wentz, thinking that, Winston wasn't going to have a big game. And so obviously he didn't have what Winston did, but this bailed it out. I ended up winning all the playoff games that I had Wentz that I made that decision in.
Nice.
It has nothing to do with analysis. Just want to sort of slide that in there. NBD, no big deal. Just,
Got it.
Just mentioning it.
Yeah. So I think Wentz is probably somewhere between maybe 10th and 12th for quarterback options for the rest of the season. Just looking at guys that are comparably ranked or have performed comparably this season, plus the matchups. It's now home to Washington.
It's at Washington.
At Washington, excuse me. At Dallas, and then home. No, at the Giants, excuse me. Sorry, I totally butchered that. I'm misreading this.
Here, I'll help you out here. it will seem like an Eagles home game.
Right.
Because all the Redskins fans have completely bailed on the team, rightfully so, and so they just sell their tickets. So it will seem like an Eagles home game, but it actually will be at FedEx Field.
Right. At FedEx Field.
And then home to the Cowboys.
And then at the Giants, which of course is just a short train ride from Philadelphia. The backfield got interesting last night too, Matthew, because Miles Sanders left the game due to cramps at one point. He finishes with 19 total touches, 10.9 fantasy points, but he was outplayed decidedly by Boston Scott. Boston Scott, a 6th-round pick in 2018 out of Louisiana Tech, whose pint size he looks a lot like, let's be honest, Darren Sproles, the guy that in some ways he is replacing. 10 carries.
But almost like a built version of Darren Sproles.
Oh, Darren Sproles is chiseled. You ever see Darren Sproles up close?
For his size, yes. But
he is huge. Like
on the field, it seemed like he was a little bit bigger.
Yeah, a little bit bigger. I'd say that's fair. Yeah.
Yep.
Boston Scott finishes with 10 carries for 59 yards, plus 6 catches for 69 yards, 24.8 fantasy points for absolutely nobody that started him. So the question is this real? Jordan Howard's still not cleared for contact.
Yeah.
And there's no telling how long that might be, Matthew. Is this real with Boston Scott?
I don't know how it's not. Because, look, if you're Doug Peterson and you're saying, like, we got to move this ball, right? And Doug Peterson there's a couple things that we know for a fact. Doug Peterson always likes to use a committee. He has, ever since he's been in Philadelphia, he has always used a committee. And we saw it earlier this year with Jordan Howard and Miles Sanders. Okay. So then they signed Jay Ajayi, who, in theory, like, looks the part, right? He's a bigger back, and he can sort of fill that Jordan Howard role. But there's a reason why Jay Ajayi was sort of kicking around for a while, and for whatever.
He also can't catch, which is tough.
Right. So here comes Boston Scott, who sort of bounced around the league a little bit. He spent some time in New Orleans. He was in the Saints camp for a while, but talented player, hasn't really got a chance. So he finally gets a chance in a game in which nothing is happening, in a game in which the Eagles were at one point down 17-3, and Boston Scott, look, all the cliches, provides a spark off the bench, carries the offense, but all those cliches happen to be true. And so I don't know if you're Doug Peterson and you're sitting around, you don't know when you're getting Aguilar back, you don't know when you're getting Jordan Howard back, you don't know when you're getting Alshon Jeffrey back. Like, I got to figure out a way to beat the Redskins and keep my playoff hopes alive. Yeah. I don't know how Boston Scott suddenly goes back to being a bench guy. So do I think it's a committee between him and Miles Sanders? I do. Do I think I'll rank Miles Sanders ahead of him this week? I do. But do I think he's a viable flex play this week against Washington, assuming Jordan Howard is out? I do.
Yeah, I think I feel the same way all the way around. He was added to the waiver column this morning after last night's efforts. The Eagles, as we talked about just a moment ago, were super thin amongst wide receivers.
One last thing on Boston Scott real quickly, which I thought was telling. At the end of the game, when they were trying to score, Boston Scott, despite his size, got some goal line between the tackles carries.
Yeah, hot hand.
I mean, he obviously scored the touchdown earlier, but I mean, they just he played the quote Jordan Howard role when they got in close, when they were near the end zone. Like, he didn't convert on the second one. They ended up scoring with Zach Ertz to tie the game. But I mean, they weren't scared to send him between the tackles in a short yardage situation. And that is the only thing that I think you could point at and say, what if he's 5'6", what are you going to do?
Sure.
Well, he's 5'6", 203, and they were not scared to send him into the middle. And actually, he performed well. He converted one touchdown. He moved the pile a little bit. I'm more Boston Scott believer than not.
So Alshon Jeffrey leaves the game yesterday. I believe they called it a foot injury at the time. No further information other than expected to undergo further testing today. Greg Ward saw 9 targets. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside ran 50 routes. That was the most amongst Eagles players last night, but saw just 3 targets. I don't think, Matthew, I can pound the table for any Eagles wide receiver at the moment. We'll update you more on whether Aguilar or Jeffrey is available later on this week, but it's really hard for me to envision trusting any Eagles wide receiver in a championship matchup or a semifinal even, just even in a reasonable matchup against the Redskins, who the secondary is fine. I think it's okay. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's great. You know this team better than I do. But yes, my point, I don't think you can trust any of these wide receivers and do so implicitly. So
I completely agree. Like, if I'm out there looking for wide receiver help this week, there are other places that I would prefer to go.
I feel the same
that are
way.
out there. I mean, Tampa Bay is one of them. I was just, by the way, on Twitter just noticing this. Jeremy Fowler, reporting that wide receiver Mike Evans expected to miss the rest of the season per source. Barring unexpected improvement on hamstring, Tampa Bay will be without its top receivers.
Yep,
So
no surprise there
yeah.
after he pulled up lame. And Bruce Arians sort of suggested it yesterday at his press conference. So no surprise on Mike Evans. But just to round out the Eagles, a nice night for Zach Ertz. 9 for 91 with 2 touchdowns, a fourth quarter touchdown, and an overtime touchdown. All right, Matthew, before we talk about some news surrounding wide receivers, will you please tell us about TD Ameritrade?
I would love to tell you about TD Ameritrade. So let's see. Burglars love the oh no, that's not me. That's TD Ameritrade. Okay.
Right at the top.
No, that's not TD Ameritrade.
Okay, well, then we'll switch it up.
Who am I doing? Am I doing TD Ameritrade or ADT?
You are doing.
I already talked about that. I talked about TD.
Yeah, you do ADT.
Go ahead. finish
Okay,
with
there
ADT.
you go.
Yeah.
Got it. Understood. Well, look, Field Yates loves the holidays. Chapin Yates loves the holidays. And you know who else loves the holidays? Burglars. Burglars love the holidays. I'm not saying you're a burglar. I'm not saying Chapin's a burglar. I'm also not saying you're not. I'm not with you 24/7, so
Okay.
I don't know.
You can't. Okay, I'll try to confirm.
Okay, fair enough. Please do. Look, burglars love the holidays because they know you're going out to shop for last-minute gifts, off to visit family, or going on a long vacation. So you have to ask yourself, what does real protection mean for you? Well, with ADT, you can get all the latest innovation in smart home security, combined with 24/7 monitoring from the most trusted name in home security. Customize your system to fit your home. Everything from video doorbells, indoor and outdoor cameras, smart locks, and lights, all controlled from the ADT app or the sound of your voice, the dulcet tones of a young Field Yates. So help protect your home this holiday season. Get the nation's #1 smart home security provider. Get ADT. Visit ADT.com today.
All right, Matthew, let's get to some of the news and a bunch of injury updates, including that surrounding Calvin Ridley, another NFC South wide receiver, out for the season because of an abdominal injury. A reminder, it's week 15. A lot of players would not necessarily be missing all that much time otherwise, but because it's the end of the season, they go to IR. Next man up in the Falcons wide receiver group. Is there anybody who can be fantasy relevant, Matthew, or because of Austin Hooper being back and a schedule that next includes the San Francisco 49ers, are you just instead relying upon Julio and Hooper and Devontae Freeman and Matt Ryan?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I know there's some talk about Russell Gage, and maybe you could see him, but I think for me, I feel like Gage's emergence has also happened at the, when Austin Hooper was out.
Yep.
So again, like, and I might feel differently if this were week 8, but it's week 15.
Feel the same way. Yep.
I don't want to
along.
get cute with somebody like a Russell Gage, especially on the road at San Francisco. And look, I get it. There, no Richard Sherman, no D Ford. The 49ers defense has gotten banged up recently.
Sure. Yep.
But it's still going to be a home game for the 49ers after last week's, defensive letdown. I mean, the Saints, moved the ball back and forth on them. I would be hard-pressed to trust Russell Gage. To me, it's Julio and Hooper, and Freeman if you need some running back help.
What do you got, Daniel?
Russell Gage just feels, I know we've done the whole fetch thing, but Russell Gage feels like fetch. Since Mohamed Sanu has been traded, we keep trying to have him be a thing, and it's just not happening, on a consistent basis whatsoever.
2 catches for 17 yards over his past couple of games. Look otherwise. Rashad Penny tore his ACL. He's out for the season. What it means is that Chris Carson's going to be a very busy man. No other Seahawks running back that either one of us is advocating to pick up. They get a great matchup on Sunday, despite the fact that they have to cross the country and play the Panthers. That's a great matchup for Chris Carson, followed up by Arizona. Carson should be locked in as a running back 1 for the rest of the season. Talked about this on Monday, but DJ Chark is week to week with this foot injury. Wouldn't surprise me if he sits out for the rest of the season just because of the fact that Jaguars are playing for nothing other than draft positioning and perhaps saving their jobs. We talked about Chris Conley yesterday and the possibility of him stepping up. The problem is, again, Matthew, he had, 1 catch this past week? Hard to feel super solid about starting any Jaguars wide receiver going into this week other than D.D. Westbrook. Could Chris Conley pop? He could. They have a great matchup against a bad Oakland secondary. Just don't know that I'm going to have him ranked as a top, 35 or even 40 play.
Yeah, there's a couple of desperation dart throws, right? So we mentioned the Eagles wide receivers. We mentioned Chris Conley. I just mentioned Mike Evans. So, Justin Watson or Brashad Perryman, they could certainly pop against the Lions this week, right? But so there's a bunch of guys sort of out there that you sort of squint and you close your eyes and you hope, right? But that's what they are. It's again, week 16, if you're limping into the playoffs, you're limping into the playoffs. But I don't know that you would have tons of confidence. It's just sort of like, I'd prefer a Zach Pascal. I'd prefer a Debo Samuel. I'd
Darius
prefer a Cole
Slayton.
Beasley, Darius Slayton, guys that are out there in a decent amount of leagues.
So Darius Geis is out for Week 15 for the Redskins. Right now, they've only said Week 15, Matthew, but wouldn't surprise me again if he's out for the rest of the season. Adrian Peterson steps back into the starting lineup.
NFL Network reporting that he is unlikely to play the rest of the season. I've heard from some other people. I believe that to be correct as well. I think it would be very surprising, especially given how the season has gone for Washington, that we see Darius Geis again. I think they want to be smart with a young player who's dealt with some injury issues in his career. So good news that the MCL, the tests were negative, so everything looks good. MCL's intact, but my expectation is that we've probably seen the last of Darius Geis this season. And I agree with you. So Adrian Peterson gets Philadelphia this week, then the Giants, then Dallas. Like, not involved in the passing game, but runs hard, is going to get a bunch of volume and always a chance that he falls in the end zone. So I think he's a flex, not a ton of upside. There's a low floor there, but certainly you could do worse at the running back position given kind of the state of the position.
Jameis Winston's optimistic he can play through that thumb injury, Matthew. Again, he played through it on Sunday. I'm not dismissing it entirely, but I don't know that this is a guy that you have to feel entirely like, whoa, I'm super nervous about Jameis Winston on Sunday. Like, if you're feeling confident in playing with him or playing him, you've always understood the risk involved with Jameis Winston.
Yeah.
So no risk it, no risk it, as we often say here on the podcast.
No Mike Evans certainly hurts as well. So if you got the thumb and then you've got no Mike Evans,
Sure,
you don't
but
love.
It's a great matchup.
It is a great matchup with Daniels.
Detroit.
Horrible, awful, lost season, Detroit Lions. How many wins do the Lions have?
Takes one to know one, Matthew. That's how many wins we have.
No, I'm just asking. How many wins?
3 wins.
See, and what's amazing is that my Redskins, which I believe to be the worst franchise in the NFL, we also have 3 wins.
Really?
How's that possible? How's that possible that your franchise, which is sort of on an upswing, has the same number of wins as my terrible, doesn't know what we're doing franchise?
I have no idea, Matthew Berry. That's a great question. That's a really fantastic question from that standpoint.
At one point you guys had such optimism. I never had optimism.
No.
I feel like you would be more disappointed at this point because this is what I expected, right? This is what I know to be happening, and I'm actually rooting for us to continue to lose. I'm upset we won the 2 games that we won. So
if the draft were today, the Redskins would have the 3rd pick. The Lions would have the 5th pick. You guys can argue over this a little bit later on.
Take that, baby! Woohoo!
Lamar Jackson.
We tank better than you. Boom.
Lamar Jackson is banged up right now with a quad injury. As of this moment, we do not know that it's a major threat to keep him out of Thursday
We should redo that.
game.
I was doing booms on camera, and I bet the video people will want us to do a. We should reset that. I apologize to Kenny and the video team for doing all the booms on Daniel.
Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson is a little bit banged up right now with a quad injury. Don't know right now that it's a real threat to keep him out of Thursday night's game, but the short weeks are always a bit tricky. It would be RG3 stepping in, but I think that the reality is if, and this is a major if, Lamar Jackson does sit, because it doesn't feel like it's trending that way, Matthew, some other names to consider for Week 15, and we can talk about these more on Friday, because if Lamar Jackson's sitting out on Thursday night, you are probably not playing Sam Darnold, and you're probably waiting for the weekend anyways. Phillip Rivers available in almost 60% of leagues coming off of a big game this past Sunday.
And home to Minnesota, which is not the Minnesota Vikings defense you think it is.
Yep.
Like, you can throw on Minnesota.
Mitch Trubisky, who we talked about quite a bit yesterday, available in 80% of leagues. He's been quarterback 4 from weeks 10 through 14. Ryan Fitzpatrick, who plays that Giants secondary we saw last night, that's not very good. Plus, as you discussed earlier, Matthew, Eli Manning, 95% available. They play to the Giants, the Dolphins, on Sunday. And obviously, if Daniel Jones returns, he would also be in this conversation.
Question for you here, follow-up. So we're going to go into waivers tonight, and we are unlikely to know the status of Lamar Jackson. The expectation is John Harbaugh has said he's day-to-day. I agree with you. It doesn't seem serious as we stand now. But there have been times where it's just like, it's fine. And then all of a sudden it's like,
creeps up on you, sure.
It creeps up on you, right? Josh Jacobs, I think, was an example of last year. Like, we knew he was last week. We knew he was banged up, but we're like, he's probably going to play through it. He's been playing through it for a while, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's out, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going into waivers tonight, and you've been riding Lamar Jackson all season long, and he's your only quarterback, because why would you need another one? Are you picking up another quarterback in exchange in as opposed to picking up another piece you might need, like a streaming defense or a tight end or whatever? Or are you just like, you know what, I'm going to roll the dice, and that if Lamar Jackson is out on Thursday, I'll see who's left on the waiver wire?
Because like how many teams right now in the playoffs are also shopping for a quarterback? If someone wants to play defense on you and grab 4 quarterbacks this week, that's his or her prerogative, but I would be waiting for the opportunity to grab Lamar Jackson, especially if there was a great, maybe you are really worried about your defense this week and you've got a great streaming option that you could add on the wire.
I agree with that. I think it's worth knowing your league. Like if you're in a deeper league, like I'm in some deep leagues where there's prize pools for the people that are out of the playoffs. As well. So there's more competition on the waiver wire. My point is there's more competition on the waiver wire than just the teams that are left in the playoffs. So it's important to know sort of the size of your free agent pool and
under
and the
that
motivations.
context, then yes, it changes the game. But under what 98% of leagues are, where it's just the people that are playing left, then yes, I will be willing to be patient with Lamar Jackson. We're going to take a quick break and come back and discuss players on waivers and also more important information from our friends at the V Foundation.
Hey, Bitter Berry, and here's the Week 14 edition of Thanks for Nothing. Olamide Zeka. I'm just going to move on to names I can read. Justin Watson, this just in. You're not supposed to score, knock it off, all right? Malcolm Brown, what? Everybody already dropped you. Demaryius Thomas, hey, 2013 called, they want their touchdowns back. Derek Watt, more like Derek, what are you doing trying to ruin my fantasy team? Kendrick Bourne, hey, here's a Bourne ultimatum. Stop scoring or else, you jerk.
Fantasy, you in the 06010. Focus. Fantasy.
We're back, and before we get to the waiver wire, which of course is now live on ESPN.com, Matthew, a little bit of information on our friends, the V Foundation.
The V Foundation, look, people know how much the V Foundation means to me, and I think it means to everyone. We ask our listeners to give because people give to people, not causes. Here's what you can do. You can head to v.org/donate to help give people a better chance. And you know what? We'd like to motivate you if you don't mind. So I'll give you a couple of things that you can get if you'd like to donate. And, obviously everyone can afford different amounts. So we ask that you, donate what you can. But if you are a fan of the show, you've often heard the songs that we play, the Wasting Away in Matthew Berryville and Not Cool Keith's theme song, which is my personal favorite, and songs about Secret Squirrel and Thirsty Kyle and Field Yates and Stefania Bell and Mike Clay and even a Bill Barnwell song. I think we've got a Bill Barnwell song as well.
We sure do, Matthew
so
Berry.
it's our friends.
It's a Bill Barnwell.
It's just for you.
World that we're living in. He's got the best pod, and the world should be listening.
So good. So brilliant.
So brilliant. It is our friends Kit and Chip who do an amazing job every single time. The Barnwell song is great. My personal favorite is still the Not Cool Keith song, Bristol Rocks. And so anyway, so Thursday, what Secret Squirrel. If you would like to get those songs sent to you, here's what you do. You make a donation to the V Foundation. You go to v.org/donate. Make a donation, whatever amount you can afford, right? I don't believe there's any minimum, right? And then you send a copy of that receipt to 06010music@gmail.com.
That's the number, 06010.
Yes, 06010. Thank you, Field. 06010music@gmail.com. Once again, 06010music@gmail.com, along with the receipt of your donation to the V Foundation. And Kit and Chip, probably not both of them. They probably don't stand over the computer together. It's probably one or the other of them.
You never know, though.
One is the right hand of the keyboard, one is the left hand of the keyboard, and they just do it simultaneously like this.
Maybe. I mean, they're it would be impressive, but at least one of them will send you all the songs. Now, I've got something else for you. Maybe you've been a little rude. Maybe you came home and you were a little bit tipsy. Maybe you were in a bad mood and you got on the social media and you said something mean, something not so nice, something impolite, something improper to me or one of my ESPN colleagues, and they blocked you. And you're sitting back here in a moment of regret saying, I didn't really mean that, or I was joking and it was taken the wrong way, or geez, Barry, what's with a thin skin? Whatever the response is, if you're like, I'd like to be unblocked. I'd like to be unblocked. Well, here's what you do. You can send that same receipt. You don't have to donate again. Honestly, I'm not going to know. Send that same receipt to unblockme at ESPN.com along with your social media handle, and I will unblock you. And if you do it if you've been blocked by another personality, I have no promises. The only one I can guarantee is myself. But I promise to send an email saying like, hey, Daniel Dopp, this person, you blocked this person. They're asking, would you unblock them because they made this donation? And, generally people have been pretty open to that. So
to be fair, at Mike Clay NFL was really mean. And so when I blocked him, I don't think I'm going to go back on that one.
I thought it was
That's
merited. Fair. In your defense, I thought it was a totally merited block.
Thank you. I appreciate
completely
that.
Merited. And that, by the way, that's the other thing is like, I can't, because some people get really, really nasty and rude and crazy. And like, if it's a weird situation, like, I'm not forcing anyone. The only one I will guarantee is that myself. If I have blocked you, I will unblock you if you donate. But by the way, it also gives you, it's not a license to then be a jerk again. You can get reblocked. It just gives you a clean slate. Either way, it's all for a great cause. Again, the V Foundation for Cancer Research, 100% of all the money raised by the V Foundation goes to cancer research, which I think is very important. People don't realize that is not always the case with all charities in terms of a lot of it goes to overhead and staff salaries and that kind of stuff. 100% of what you donate will go to fighting cancer.
Let's rip through some waiver wire ads of the week. We've been talking about him a ton over the past month. And Ryan Tannehill, what, you want to cut me off?
Yeah, I was going to cut you off. But I just sort of gave a wave so that you stopped yourself, so it wasn't rude of me to.
Got it. Okay.
I was merely going to say, Field Yates' column, this free agent finds column for Week 15, already up now on ESPN.com and in the ESPN app. I'm a company man. I encourage you to go check that out. But Field, as the author of Free Agent Finds, if I need a quarterback, should I head to Tennessee?
You sure should, Matthew. Ryan Tannehill's available in 62.5% of leagues. He's quarterback 2 amongst qualifiers on a per-game basis since Week 7. I don't need to tell you about Ryan Tannehill because if you have a pulse, you are aware of how well he has played, his matchups going forward. Texans at home, Saints at home, and then down to Houston for another matchup with the Texans twice in 3 weeks. As Drew Lock will tell you, the Texans' defense can be had. I love some Ryan Tannehill. Once again, a top 12 option this week.
You've been writing the column for a number of years, Field. Is Ryan Tannehill the guy that you've written about the longest, that you've been like, why will people not buy into this guy? Because you've been writing about him forever.
Yeah, Mohamed Sanu was a player that for a long time, and this was when he was in Atlanta, and he was almost always on that flex radar. He would always sort of float between 45 and 50%. Darius Geis this year has been sort of a hoverer as well, and then Devontae Parker was a big-time hoverer. Tannehill, but I get it with Tannehill a little bit, only because it's one position. It's one player per position. So there are so few quarterbacks that you need to pick up right now, as we're talking about. Like, how many people are hunting for a quarterback specifically for Week 15 or 16? Maybe some. But Tannehill will be the clear-cut option.
I mean, unfortunately, Tannehill, like I'm in a 16-team league playoff that isn't I'm in a different 16-team league, and my quarterback, the only quarterback I have, is Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
And he's been tough recently, and they have a tough matchup this week. So I mean, Tannehill unfortunately is not available in that league, but I'm looking around. One of the reasons why Ryan Tannehill has been so good recently is his receiver.
That's right, a very Darius Slayton like 5-catch, 153-yard 2-touchdown effort from A.J. Brown this past Sunday for the Titans. Feels like a big play waiting to happen. As I said earlier about Darius Slayton, he has 10 games with 5 or fewer targets this season, so there is some risk. But he also has big play ability, Matthew. If you're chasing upside, if you're down big after the first week of a 2-week playoff, A.J. Brown should be on your radar. As we talked about earlier, it's like, would you rather a guy like Nelson Aguilar, if he plays because he might get you 6 or 7 targets, or would you rather a guy like A.J. Brown, who might not need 6 or 7 targets to score you 15 to 18 points?
You can just take it to the house. In the same schedule that you just mentioned with Tannehill, 2 games against Houston and 1 against the Saints.
Yep.
So Texans and Saints the next 2. You like those matchups. You're not really scared about that. You expect you expect the Titans to be able to throw and have to throw against the Saints, but to throw in both games as well. You never like to see a player go down to injury, but when someone does, it creates opportunity for another player, and that's what's happened in Los Angeles.
Correct. Tyler Higbee has stepped up as the go-to tight end in Los Angeles now, playing just as well as Gerald Everett did prior to his injury. Back-to-back games with 100 receiving yards for Tyler Higbee. He's got 11 targets on 24 routes this past Sunday. So when he is playing, he is getting looks in the passing game. Higbee, a very effective blocker, and tight ends are very hard to find.
Yeah, he's been nothing short of amazing. And it does also seem like the Rams have gone to a lot more 2 tight end sets to try to help their running game, which just puts Higbee, who's the pass-catching tight end, out there. He's running a lot more routes. He's just on the field a lot more, and there's clearly a connection between him and Jared Goff. You like the matchup this week against the Cowboys, who I believe are top 6 in terms of most fantasy points allowed to opposing tight ends. It's never easy to make sense of the 49ers backfield, but if Kyle Shanahan and his coaching staff are seeing the same things we are, there's a clear-cut guy.
It should be Raheem Mostert, 10 carries for 69 yards and a touchdown this past Sunday. He had 2 catches for 40 yards. The touchdown through the air actually came on a throw by Emmanuel Sanders. He's got a rushing touchdown in 3 straight games. He actually leads the NFL in yards per carry since the beginning of last season. The qualifier there being at least 125 carries, which eliminates a couple of guys that have reverses or one long play amongst wide receivers or small sample sizes. But yes, Raheem Mostert has been awesome. If you're looking for some flex potential, I think Mostert fits the bill for the 49ers, who should be able to run the football effectively, even with all of their injuries against the Falcons this Sunday. That game is being played in San Francisco after a really difficult 2-week stretch for the 49ers, going to Baltimore and then New Orleans.
He's scored in 3 straight. He's the second best running back in fantasy over the last 2 weeks. Now,
before we get to the other options,
yes, sir.
We have some other options, but first, we're going to hear from our friend, Daniel Dopp.
Guys, do you ever feel like ticketing websites make getting to an event difficult on
all
purpose?
The time.
Like
Constantly.
All the time.
Field and I talk about nothing else.
Right? It's like
literally.
It's as if they're so big they can get away with not caring about the customer experience.
Yeah, a bunch of knuckleheads.
Bunch of knuckleheads. With millions of live event tickets and a price match guarantee, SeatGeek proves there's a better way. Search sports, live music, comedy, and more. SeatGeek has the tickets you're looking for, and guess what? They're all in one place.
What?
Yep. SeatGeek pulls together millions of tickets from all over the web. I don't know what a well is. I don't know why the tickets would be in a well. Yeah, that was weird.
You know what a well is.
Yeah. Then, what if there was like just tickets in a well, and the only way for you to get a ticket was just to jump into the well and grab all your tickets? Man, SeatGeek is so much better than that. SeatGeek pulls together millions of tickets from all over the web, and then it rates each deal on a scale of 1 to 10. Finally, SeatGeek displays them on an interactive seat map. Interactive seat map is like a computer. It's like a little computer, Matthew. I know that you're used to like typewriters and pencils and things like that. But finally, SeatGeek breaks down all the details. Green dots mean good deals. Red dots are overpriced. In this scenario, Field's seat would probably be a green dot. Matthew's seat would probably be a red dot, just if we had to talk about it for the podcast.
I agree, yep.
And every purchase, fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets with confidence. SeatGeek will even give you $10 off your first SeatGeek purchase. You can say 10 swears and still get a ticket, and it will cost you the same amount of money. All you need to do is use our promo code. Download the SeatGeek app today. Use promo code FFF for $10 off your first purchase. That's promo code FFF for $10 off on your first purchase. All right, Field, we talked about all the people that we had just mentioned in yesterday's show, but I want to get into some other options that we didn't talk about in Monday's podcast. Is that okay?
Let's do it, Daniel.
All right. Matthew, you want to take the ship back over?
We had
Captain, my captain.
I would love to, and I'll let you know that we don't expect T.Y. Hilton back this week. Paris Campbell has been placed on the IR, and so there is a wide receiver in Indianapolis, Field, that is kind of an interesting guy.
Zach Pascal has played well for the Colts this season in moments where he had to fill in for T.Y. Hilton. He had 5 catches for 74 yards and a touchdown this past week. And they now play the Saints, who their defense on paper looks really good, but it had some vulnerable moments this past week. Pascal is one of 9 players with at least 5 catches and 70 receiving yards in each of the past 2 weeks. Volume is king. They play on Monday night.
Certainly like him, and a reminder that Fantasy Trends is brought to you by TD Ameritrade. He's our friend, and certainly a friend of fantasy, Cole Beasley.
That's right.
Been nothing short of terrific this year.
He's another good example of a player that just kind of lingered on the waiver wire column for a long time, Matthew, because I think he's available in only 10-team, or maybe 12-team leagues. 14 to 16-team leagues, Cole Beasley has already been snatched up, I would hope. But if not, go take a look. He's got 3 straight games with 7+ targets. He's scored, I think, 5 touchdowns in his past 7 games. he's just been solid. He's been solid enough that if you play in a deeper league, you're looking for a flex consideration. You don't want to play someone like Sony Michel anymore. You don't want to play somebody that's got a bad matchup this week. Find yourself a Cole Beasley in your life.
The Steelers used to be so brutal against the slot. That has changed recently. They have shored up their defense this year in a significant manner. But still, Cole Beasley, who's getting a lot of looks and should be a part of that passing attack against the Steelers on Sunday night. So, hey, listen, last week I made a bold call of Ian Thomas, or he was my long shot, I should say. On Fantasy Football Now, I mentioned Ian Thomas.
Yeah.
And with Greg Olsen out, still an option this week?
Yeah, if he is out again, if Greg Olsen is out again, a bold pickup would be Ian Thomas, available in almost 99.5% of leagues. So if you play fantasy football, he's available. He has gotten some exposure in the past because of Olsen's other injuries, and when he gets 5+ targets in a game, Ian Thomas has averaged 12.4 fantasy points per game. So a worthwhile addition for those that are still looking for some tight end reinforcements.
And then last one here, it's interesting. We've talked a lot about the Miami defense and how poor they are. We've talked a lot about the Miami passing attack and that they can be viable.
Yeah.
We haven't talked a lot about their running game.
Yeah, and with good reason. They can't seem to run the football that effectively, but when they do, they give the football to Patrick Laird, and when they don't, they throw it a ton, and he's a very good pass catcher. That's kind of the specialty in his game. He had 4 catches for 38 yards, so another deeper league consideration, and this one's different than Beasley. Like I said, I think Beasley is already used in most deep leagues, but given that Laird's available in 90% of leagues, no matter what size league you play in, you should take a look. A deep league flex consideration. We're trying to narrow this down, guys. It's the final couple weeks of the season. Don't overthink things too much, but if you need to go searching for a name and aren't previously familiar with Patrick Laird, head on over to the waiver wire and consider adding him. Daniel, hit that button.
It's New York Times bestselling author Matthew Berry with another self-serving, self-indulgent, all-about-me promo.
Just a reminder that if you are looking for a gift this holiday season, if you want some good, good fantasy karma for the playoffs, trying to move along, go to the fantasylife.com store, fantasylife.com, where we have shirts and hoodies and sweatshirts, and we have trophies as well. You need a last place trophy. You need a first place trophy. We got trophies. There's cornhole boards there, field. Like, there's all sorts of amazing things.
Nice.
Phone covers. We have phone covers now. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So anyway, and we have stuff that, we have designs. If you're a fan of the 06010, we have designs around Field, around Daniel, around Stefania. And so all sorts of great stuff. Check it out. FantasyLife.com, hoodies, hats, tumblers, and more. Use the promo code PLAYOFFS with an S, PLAYOFFS15, and that'll get you 15% off at FantasyLife.com. Once again, promo code PLAYOFFS15 gets you 15% off.
Playoffs?
Playoffs? FantasyLife.com.
I want to hear Field do it.
Playoffs?
Oh, that was
playoffs.
No, that's pretty good.
Was it good?
Yeah, I think so.
I think
Playoffs?
playoffs.
Playoffs?
Playoffs?
Am I too high? Is that what it is?
I think you're a little too high.
Playoffs?
Playoffs.
Playoffs?
Playoffs? It's a new name game right here.
I love you guys. I don't know what we're doing. Field,
All right.
Keith, let's do
Not
some.
cool, Keith.
there
What do
we
we
go.
have for
There it
social?
is.
Not cool Keith, not cool Keith, not cool Keith, lift some rocks.
I was good with you guys just talking about playoffs for a while.
Playoffs?
If you're going to say the word, you need to say it right,
So,
Keith.
anyway, these are people that tweet us at Fantasy Focus, that leave comments on the ESPN YouTube channel when we're broadcasting live there. Of course, the Facebook page for ESPN Fantasy, we broadcast there as well, and on the ESPN app. Not cool, Keith. What do we have?
Got 2 for you. Coach wants to know, is Devontae Freeman viable against San Francisco?
Define viable. I would say so, like as in a low-end RB2 kind of way. Like, my expectation is that he touches the ball 20 times. Because they use him in the passing game. So even in a game in which they fall down, they fall below, they fall behind in a big way. It's not like he's going anywhere. Like, I know Brian Hill had the one big run or whatever, but Devontae Freeman is not only the best running back on that team, it's not close.
Yeah.
And so my expectation here, especially with Calvin Ridley out for the game, they're looking for offense. And as we talked about, like the 49ers defense, we just saw what the Saints did to them. They're banged up. No D Ford, no Richard Sherman in this game. They're they're on the mend. They've been banged up.
Yes, they have been. Yep.
So I would say, yes, I do believe Devontae Freeman is viable against 49ers.
Other one here comes from Bryant. Wants to know which available wide receiver carries the highest floor this week.
So some of the names to consider include Deebo Samuel, Cole Beasley, Zach Pascal, Anthony Miller, Russell Gage. I would think Zach Pascal, number one wide receiver for his offense, an okay quarterback. I think Jacoby Brissett sort of settled in as like an average starting quarterback in the NFL. Deebo maybe is the most talented of that group.
Yeah.
But he's
the
the number two
about,
behind Emmanuel
right.
Sanders. I think the safest floor is probably Zach Pascal.
I would agree. You know, if you just basically said which one of these guys is most likely to get 7 to 9 targets, I think it's Zach Pascal, especially when you think about the matchup with the Saints. We know New Orleans is going to score. They're going to have to throw to keep up with New Orleans.
Yep.
And so, like, you know, you'll see some Jack Doyle there, but they're running out of guys to throw to. So Zach Pascal, I think, is the guy that is the most obvious one to get a bunch of looks of that list.
All right, I have one more question, but it's from me. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So,
Are you still in any playoffs? That'd be exciting.
I'm going to come through this glass and I'm going to punch you so hard.
You know what?
That
That's
would be
fine.
mean.
I would. I'll be honest with you.
Would you make the Kool-Aid
I will
guy?
allow that. No.
Oh, yeah.
I'll allow that.
please.
The Kool-Aid guy. I will allow that. If you can actually make it through that glass, you can punch
This
me.
glass is thick.
It's very thick,
Because
yes.
it's very thick.
Very
so by the
thick
time
glass.
he gets to me, he's gonna be bloodied and like it's yeah, it's fine. It'll be the feeblest, lamest punch ever. Knock yourself out.
Talk
I'd like
to
see
me-
you come through that window.
I want to ask this question.
Yeah, what do you got?
Are you guys as disappointed in Alvin Kamara this year as I am? Because I'm looking at a guy that has never once had 100 yards rushing or receiving. His yards per reception have gone down each of the 3 years that he's been in the NFL. When you look at what he's done, like 10 catches for 47 yards, 9 catches for 48 yards. Like he feels like from a pass catching perspective, he's like a glorified Tariq Cohen. Like he's not breaking big plays. He's not doing any of these things. And I realize we don't talk about him because he's still running back 11, which is great. But for a guy that you took at number 3, like I feel like there hasn't been enough around him to be like, he's been a big disappointment this year in fantasy.
Saquon Barkley, right? I mean, like as Field talked about when we were talking about Barkley, when you draft a guy that high, you're expecting week in, week out, constant high-end production that's going to carry you in weeks when the rest of your team isn't doing much. And like, you know, look, we saw it last week with Zeke when he finally had a 2-touchdown game, and obviously McCaffrey's been nothing short of amazing, but there hasn't felt like there's been a week where Alvin Kamara has just carried you, where we've just been talking about sort of the brilliance that is Alvin Kamara. And I don't know if it's the offense. I don't know if it's because he also got banged up there for a while, a Field. But I'm sort of with Daniel. Like he's been especially because I will tell you that most consensus rankings, I think certainly mine, but most consensus rankings basically had Barkley at number 1. And then depending on when you drafted, basically whether Zeke had reported or not, it basically McCaffrey. A lot of people had McCaffrey and Kamara as kind of a coin flip. Now I had McCaffrey higher than Kamara. I will say that. But a lot of people had it basically as a coin flip, and they were right next to each other. And if you had come to me in the preseason and said McCaffrey or Kamara, I'd said I have McCaffrey higher, but it's a coin flip. They're both super talented. So I know there's a lot of people out there that drafted Alvin Kamara and could have had Christian McCaffrey, which only just kills you even further.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what we said in August. You could make a case for any of those 4 guys. He's been disappointing. Sure, that's fair. I mean, I'm not sure to tell you other than like it stinks.
No, that's all that I wanted. I just want to feel like someone else gets me, Field.
Yeah, we all get you.
Right, but here's
everybody who did not draft Christian McCaffrey with a top 2 pick gets you. Everybody.
But here's a question. Next year, that's fascinating. Like you already start thinking about next year, right?
Yeah.
Because I'll put out my way too early top 50 here, in the next week or two or something like that. Maybe not this. Maybe I'll do it this week. I don't know, Keith. We'll talk about it. But anyway, like, I mean, it's crazy, right? I mean, like, so where, like, I'm just off the top of my head. McCaffrey's number 1 overall.
Yeah.
Who's number 2?
Probably Zeke.
Zeke, Dalvin Cook.
Maybe.
I mean, right?
He's got to slide in the top 5, right? Dalvin Cook.
Easy.
Does David Johnson even make the top 12?
100 or 12?
Stop it, Field. That was good.
Top 1200.
That was funny.
I would think that it's
guys
McCaffrey,
like Kamara and Barkley,
it's Zeke, it's
Dalvin Cook.
It's probably Saquon, and then figure it out from there.
What do you do with Austin Eckler? Where are you going to rank Austin Eckler going in next year?
He's a free agent. Talk about that
So
one.
is Melvin Gordon.
So is Melvin Gordon. Austin Eckler would be a really interesting free agent for somebody.
Seriously.
He'd be awesome. I mean, you have what's considered Josh Jacobs could move up the ranks a little bit there if they get things a little bit further along in offense. You got a good running back class this year. DeAndre Swift from Georgia, amongst many other players.
Le'Veon Bell dropping down your list after what he's done with the Jets.
Fournette's had a nice year.
Fournette's passing game usage has been outrageous.
Yep.
Outrageous. Darius Geis, obviously top 6 or 7.
Totally.
Obviously.
Yeah, Bo Scarborough.
Yeah, Bo Scarborough.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll get to all of that and so much more. In the meantime, a reminder, tomorrow night, for those that are going to be there in Soho, was it Sobe, Brooklyn? Soho?
Dolby Soho.
Dolby
Sobe?
Soho.
What's
Dolby Soho.
Energy drink.
And it's decked out in Star Wars.
Super cool Star Wars installation. As a part of our thing, you'll be able to see all the Star Wars stuff as a part of it. So it'll be rad. Definitely, we're excited to be able to be there.
Yeah,
Okay, check out
but
that.
again, don't try to sign up because we are at capacity, right? We're actually, I think we're slightly over capacity, right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna be shoving people in there with a crowbar.
DFS CSS also coming out this week, and on Friday we have a full preview show. Should be good stuff. In the meantime, find the Fantasy Show on ESPN Plus.
Yes, there's a waiver episode out today. Follow Field Yates on Twitter and Instagram at Field Yates. Follow Keith Lipscomb at Keith Lipscomb on Twitter, at Kyle Soppe ESPN on Twitter. He is at Daniel Dopp on Twitter, at Something to Break on Instagram, and I am at Matthew Berry TMR on all forms of social media except the Fantasy Life app, where I am merely at Matthew Berry. For all of us here at the 06010, we'll see you tomorrow. Peace out. No, we'll see you Friday, except for those of you coming to Soho in New York tomorrow night. Stefania, Daniel, and I will see you there.
Oh, surprise. I'm going to record that podcast, put it out on Thursday.
Oh,
congratulations.
Snap. There you go. So a bonus episode this week as well as we do our post-Thanksgiving schedule. So a bonus episode this week of the live show. And then, yes, we will have Clay, Squirrel, and Smizzle for DFS needs and the Thursday night preview as well on Thursday. So for all of us from the 06010, peace out.
Twitter says he loves college hoops and talking tribe. Like Shefty and Steve.